Hey, this is Ricer from Dead Broke BBQ, Wisconsin, and I'm on the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. So let's amplify some backyard barbecue fun.
Welcome to the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast, your source for information on hunting, fishing, and all of your outdoor passions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. My name's Mike Anderson, and today we're going to be talking about grilling. We'll be joined by Jeff Rice of Dead Broke BBQ, who is all about grilling information and inspiration. He's a Wisconsin-based YouTube channel with the motto, Amplify Your Backyard Barbecue Fun. And that's exactly what we're going to try to do in this segment. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your goals with Dead Broke BBQ?
Well, thanks for having me on, Mike, but I am a big backyard barbecue enthusiast. So Dead Broke Barbecue was just my concept of me having fun in the backyard grilling with family and friends. And eventually I just started pressing record. I think Dead Broke Barbecue is really how I started. Now, some people will come in and comment on my videos that you don't look dead broke anymore. Well, as time goes on, I'm still dead broke because the more I do barbecue, the more I want equipment and the fun things that you can do in the backyard. And it's going to cost a little bit of money when you have an addiction to backyard grilling and barbecue like I do.
Yeah, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down as far as equipment and styles and things like that. And for the people that are watching this on YouTube and see your kind of little studio in the back, I mean, I'm sure that's not cheap, but it looks pretty sweet there. You got a nice little setup going on.
Well, thanks, Mike. I mean, obviously I have four monitors right in front of me and one over here. So yes, I have quite the whole system on making videos. It's another part of my addiction to the YouTube barbecue thing is tech equipment to, film and record in post content, I guess.
Yeah, your passions really fit into that wheelhouse of content creation. It's like you love barbecue, you love grilling, you love video stuff. It's like, well, might as well mix the two together and make a sort of perfect storm. And I watched your latest video on the barbecue grill comparisons, and you did kind of a Mortal Kombat theme. I'd have to say that was one of the more entertaining comparison videos I've seen in a while. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, when I first started my whole path down the creator content, social media deal, I didn't want to be just like everybody else when making videos. Yes, obviously, you have to cook ribs and you have to have a nice rack of ribs at the end, the best that you can do. But I had to involve my real true personality, and I'm was raised in the 80s. So everything was kind of the beginning of video games and funny stuff. TV was, in my opinion, way better back then. So part of my whole comedic adding to the videos that I do has to be part of the video, or if not, I'm not genuinely being myself, let's say, if that makes, complete sense. The Mortal Kombat thing kind of came from you see all the comparison videos on YouTube or Instagram or something like that, these shorts and all those different little concepts. Well, everybody is really serious in it, which is good. I mean, you want to know for a buyer or the purchaser wants to know what they're looking at, but nobody ever really try to make people laugh when they're doing it. Well, to have a comparison, it's a battle, right? It's two very solid brands that I used. It has to be a battle. Well, what would when I grew up and started kind of being on my own, what would you have had to compare it? Well, Mortal Kombat, video game style. So it's been a video in the works for a couple months, but when I started thinking about how am I going to do this, because static animate objects. How are they going to get them to actually be involved? Well, they got chimneys, so we got to make them blow each other up a little bit and throw some damage. So that's what the whole concept that, my mind works backwards sometimes, but I'd like to tease myself that that I can have fun with my own personality. I can laugh. So again, long drawn out question here, or answer to your question, but my videos have to have a purpose to entertain and also give you some knowledge by the time I'm done. That's where I am always pushing and striding to be better as a content creator, to tell a story in an entertaining way.
Yeah, there's a million comparison videos out there, and to do it in an entertaining fashion is just going to get people more interested in it. And you definitely hit my nostalgic buttons with that Mortal Kombat. Like I remember when I was in elementary, middle school, one of the first video games I got was Mortal Kombat. And I have to say Sub-Zero is like one of my favorite characters too. So when you're throwing that like ice balls and stuff, I'm like, yeah, yep, I'm digging this one. It's good.
Yeah,
So kudos on that one, man.
Thank you, bud. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So in your comparison, you're talking about pellet grills, and pellet grills have really kind of not revolutionized, but really made mainstream, getting out, getting into the backyard and, having fun, grilling for your family. So can you just talk a little bit about like the evolution of the pellet grill and what it's done for outdoor cooking?
Well, I really feel that the pellet grill is the new gas grill of the 80s and the 70s era. This has pushed people into a different type of cooking, though. The gas grill came out because nobody wanted to stand around and start charcoal. I still start charcoal all the time. But the gas grill kind of made people get more to, the backyard barbecue wasn't as hard. Then the pellet grill comes along, and now people can make actually barbecue. They can smoke some ribs. They can do some pulled pork. It's just a lot more convenient for the average person. Not everybody is taught how to cook on a rotisserie smoker in 1979. They're not really taught that. So the pellet grills have now made it so my friend that could barely boil water in college can actually cook, some really good barbecued chicken and some really good pulled pork. Or he hasn't tried a brisket yet, but I'm really proud of him that he can cook now. And I think it's because of the simple ease. There's no fire management in a pellet grill, really. I mean, yes, you have to, know your cooker and know the temps that it's running in different hot zones and different things. But my boys are, 14 and 15 now, and they can cook on a pellet grill. I would never let them cook on a charcoal grill. Not yet. But they can easily get on a pellet grill and cook. So I think this has opened a new window of opportunity for people that, they want to try this, but they're afraid. They don't have to be afraid. They plug it in, fill it up with some pellets, and start cooking. Really, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, there's really no need to be afraid anymore. It's like if you can understand how to run a regular oven, this is basically just a glorified oven that you put outside, and like I'd grill with my parents a bunch, like back in the day, and like my mom would do a decent amount of the grilling, and I just winced every time she'd want to make pork chops on the grill, because it was just like straight hockey pucks. I love you, Mom, but you burn it every time. Like this is brutal.
But now, not done enough. That was a part of the whole gas grill earlier days. It was never done enough in people's opinion, because they were afraid of actually temperatures too, on the food.
Yeah, and then like the evolution of the probes and all that stuff, the Wi-Fi. It's just, it makes it so much easier to cook to the proper temperature, so it's safe and so it's not overcooked.
Right. right? And now they're having better than restaurant food at home. Because I will say it's better than restaurant food at home once you learn how to cook and do some of the basics on barbecue or grilling on a pellet grill. You can make it better than
For
going
sure,
to,
because you can really make it your own. Like
right.
on your restaurants, like they're trying to replicate that exact same thing every time. Granted, they've got a successful formula and it's good, but it doesn't open up to like your creativity or your specific flavor palette or things like that. And that kind of brings me into another question, like the barbecue, ingredient companies, like how is that evolution changed in your opinion?
Well, it certainly has increased for the availability for people to get different types of rubs. That's one of my biggest thing that in seasonings. More people are doing it. There's a lot of guys that have won competitions and started their own rub company along with their competitions. Um, Obviously, there's people that will say, and I'm friends with Dan Arnold, he'll say that it's not the trick to sell the first shaker, it's the trick to sell the second one. That's really what, when you talk about the evolution, I really think the internet has made it, and, obviously the internet in a whole has made it more available for everybody, but you're also learning about rubs from people like myself. I might show a Sucklebuster's rub or a Meat Church rub or a PS seasoning rub or different things like that to show to the masses. And then now they go to a link and they can purchase that rub if they want to. So I think the biggest thing is communication on the social media platforms where people can post their different types of rubs, and you got to have people to try it, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of trying to get that quick, nailed. But I will say that I've never seen more rubs in my life, and the availability not only on the internet but even at like some of the big box stores. You'll have your Pit Boss brands of rubs that are made by certain companies. um, the big names still are out there with the Weber rubs and different things, but the individual cook guys that started making their own seasonings, they're plastered all over the Instagrams and the Facebook pages, which is made them a powerhouse to be able to advertise. And along with companies like yourselves, you guys aren't just carrying salt and pepper in your store, in your stores. You're carrying multiple rubs, which has introduced it to people that might not have ever actually thought about buying rubs at a sporting goods store, but it's such a big demand that you guys are also carrying that too. So I just think it's the evolution of internet and how people are looking at the internet to learn and discover new things compared to just, talking to people on the internet or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
for
my
sure.
best
Just
guess.
the ability to link things is huge, and
Right.
shoot videos, make it your own, and it can be a little bit overwhelming though. It's just how having a niche and just being able to show it so much, and like you walk to one of the SCHEELS stores and you go to the barbecue aisle and it's just like multiple walls of different rubs and seasonings and spices. It can
Right.
get a little bit overwhelming. So do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions on like a starting point?
Yeah, I mean, start when you first start out with a flavor profile, you already know if you're kind of cooking already. If you're already kind of cooking out in the house, you know that you like a lot of black pepper, but you don't like salt. So that's some of the you can look at it, try to figure out from the label if there's a lot of sodium in it or what. But the basics is always going to be salt, pepper, and garlic. I mean, really, you only need those three to make a really good meal of barbecue. If you like a little sweet, well, then you're starting to look at different, the best bet to try a rub or to find out about a rub is to check on the website the rub producers and the rub manufacturers, they at least label if it's a spicier rub or if it's a sweeter rub. They kind of give you a little backdrop on it. Now, before you go, and I just talked with a good friend of mine about this, and before you go and put that rub on your $70 brisket, you might want to try it first. Don't just believe an influencer that it's good. Try it, because it might be really way too salty or way too black, way too much black pepper. That it might not fit your profile.
Give it the little finger lick test, put a little bit
Yeah.
on that index finger, test it out. Have you noticed that it really fits that flavor profile, like when you test it, or is it like super strong and ends up actually being pretty good once it's actually on the meat?
Oh, 100%. I mean, black pepper is a prime example for my flavor profile that I want black pepper. And when I start with a rub, I'll look at it, try it. I'm like, I can taste the black pepper good. It's going to be good. And then I cook it. Well, those flavors kind of distribute throughout the meat. And you maybe lose that punch of black powders or black powder, black pepper. So then you're going to want to go in and maybe add a couple, shakers or shakes of, some coarse ground black pepper to that to get your actual perfect profile that you want. But yes, 100% you will see that the flavors just blend better than trying on your finger. But if you try if you don't like a real hot spicy rub and you buy it, and when you taste it, all you can taste is a bunch of cayenne pepper in it, you better back off when you're going to shake it and coat up that chunk of protein.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So question for you, how many different types of spices are you willing to use like on the same piece of meat? Do you usually like to just stick with one, or will you mix like 3, 4, 5?
I I have no problems adding more layers of flavor as long as I'm not overdoing it. Because there is a point where all you do is taste the rub. You still have to enjoy that protein, whatever it is. If it's a brisket, I can go pretty standard with just a good, SPG rub. If it's maybe I'm not in the mood, I want a little bit more spicier. Well, then we'll add a different rub that I mean, I don't. Hoochie Mama comes to my brain right now. I'll add a little bit of that on top for another little bit of a layer of flavor. There's never, I don't think, the wrong actual. I don't think there's ever really the wrong layer or the wrong. I don't think there's ever the wrong amount of spice that you put on, as long as that fits what you like. But always start out, if you're brand new to it, don't put too much, because you can always, after it's cooked, you can always add a little bit more if you want to beef it up a little bit, as we'd say. But yeah, there's certain things that I'll put 3 different brands in on a rack of ribs sometimes. Why not? I mean, you like a little bit of both profiles, and you're making your kind of your own rub. So there's nothing wrong with that. I am pretty basic, though. A lot of times when it comes to brisket, I like a 3-to-1 ratio of black pepper and salt. I want 3 parts black pepper, 1 part salt. That's really probably my favorite overall brisket.
Mm-hmm. So when you're doing your seasonings, like I struggle a little bit with brisket when knowing when enough is enough. Like, is there a certain like formula or a certain like texture on the meat when like, okay, I need to stop putting stuff on there? You have any suggestions for that?
Well, I never overdo it, and never to be too afraid to add more. And I know that's really hard to, like, you have to cook a few times to really feel that you know what you like. But a consistent shake across the whole protein is kind of what you're always looking for. I don't have a certain 5 shakes on a brisket or something like that. I go by more of a look. It looks like that every little part across the whole piece of protein is going to have the equal amounts. I'm careful when I'm shaking. If I miss some a little spot, well, you go back and dab a little bit more on there. You don't want to. I've seen people over spice meat, and it's like they've completely taken out what you're trying to cook. I've eaten competition barbecue before. It's good, but I can't eat a whole brisket. I'm not going to eat a whole brisket anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably don't want to eat a whole brisket, but we've all tried maybe.
Yeah, right. But after a competition brisket, and then you just make one that I call a eaten brisket. That eaten brisket's going to be gone a lot faster because it's not pounded with so much stuff to win that one bite competition. Mm-hmm. So less a lot of times is more when it comes to your backyard cooking. Less is more, but you want to practice. You got to do it more than just one time and expect that this is going to be the best piece of meat ever. And once you get addicted to it, you're always trying to get that best piece of meat that you've ever cooked in your life. You never are really satisfied as the cook, in my opinion. I've cooked some really good food, but I've never, maybe if I would have, you're always your hardest critic, So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And everyone wants to be king of the backyard grill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, for people that, maybe just bought a pellet grill or are listening to this and are, on the fence about buying one or interested, what are some of your suggestions on best things to cook to get really good at the pellet grill?
Well, everybody's dream when they start this is they want to cook a brisket, but don't do it. My first brisket ever was like 1988 or 89. It was dog food. I didn't even feed it to my dog because it was so bad, because I went way too crazy in my first cook. And I went to start to cook chicken, and I got so darn good at making good barbecued chicken that I tell this to everybody. Start, if you're new to a pellet grill, start out with chicken because it's inexpensive and it's pretty flexible. Yeah, you don't want to put chicken breasts on there and cook them up to 200 degrees, but you can still eat it, and it's not like you had to throw it away. So chicken is always my one that I suggest to people to start on a pellet grill. Your first smoke, your first real, I'm going to do this, and we're going to do it low and slow, and I can't wait. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. I'm going to be hanging out in the backyard, is pork butt. That's another really easy meat, more forgivable, and it's still going to be good. Even if it's a little overdone or just maybe not quite probe tender yet, it's still going to be very good, and you can do multiple things with it. If it's a little on the overdone part, well, make it into some tacos or some, I've actually, not because it's overdone, I never overcooking it. No. But we've made pork butt chili before. Pork butt macaroni and cheese, I would say your first cook should be chicken, so you can learn that pellet grill. I also like it when people do a biscuit test. That's a good thing, so you actually know where it's a little, because all pellet grills are going to have a little bit of hotter. All grills are going to have a hotter area than in a cooler zone, let's say. But learn the pit and then cook some chicken. Then, when you're ready, cook up a nice boneless pork butt. Then you don't have to even worry about the bone. Just start out with a boneless pork butt.
Nice. And I do like that suggestion about the biscuits. And I actually just did that this year. Like I hadn't cooked biscuits on a pellet grill before. I'd done like wild turkey and burgers and steaks and ribs and all that. And then I just cooked cornbread biscuits, and there is like kind of an art to it. And you do notice that, obviously it's a convection and all the temperatures should be similar, but like there are certain spots, certain areas, and it helps you really get in tune with that pellet grill. So I like that answer.
Yeah, thanks. We got one right.
There you go. So what's your personal favorite thing to grill?
To grill, it's still ribeyes. I mean, I love cooking a good reverse seared ribeye. I mean, that's still my favorite thing to actually cook overall over everything because I just like a good ribeye. I like the seared texture with the salt and pepper and garlic on it, and it's always good. It's always good. Now, I feel sorry for the SCA comp cooks because they're by the time they're done practicing, they don't really want to eat steak anymore. That's why I'm not a competition guy because I want to eat what I'm cooking. I want my family to be happy when I'm cooking. But a ribeye is still my top thing to do, still by far.
Yeah, it's tough to beat a good ribeye. I'm curious about some searing tips you have, because like with the pellet grill, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do to sear. Like, what are your suggestions or tips for doing that?
Well, um, number one, I always like to reverse sear on anything. I think a reverse sear is the easiest one to control. I have done a hot and fast right out of the gate sears, and then you take it off and put it on your cool zone, or if you got to like, you know, bring it up to temperature on a lower setting. But reverse searing is my favorite method. And I love to cook at a low temperature, around 200 degrees, get that internal up to about 115. Then you crank up the pellet grill. And this is one thing without that open sear plate. What a lot of people can do is a cast iron pan or a set of grill grates or just a hunk of steel that you can put in there to warm up and get that thing to about 500 to 600 degrees and sear it up about, a minute and a half at a turn. So about 6 minutes aside, you'll give it after you've patted dry. And I got videos on it, but the searing on a pellet grill without a flame broiler or something that can open up and you can get direct flame, you're going to need a cast iron or a set of grill grates. You can still do it at 500 degrees, but it just doesn't get that complete sear.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're trying to with me, and it doesn't matter. I have the Pit Boss with the or flame broiler or whatever they call it. Yeah, it's flame broiler option, but I never use it. I just crank it all the way up and get my cast iron in there, get that nice and hot, and then sear it, push her down, and like I say, about 2 to 3 minutes aside, and you got a nice crispy sear on the outside and a
Okay.
medium rare steak. You can't use a grocery store steak, but a good 2 inch thick cut will you'll if you like medium rare, that's how you're going to cook it.
There you go. Okay, well, I'm a little bit curious on the process with this cast iron. So
Mhm.
basically, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you're cooking your steak. You hit that temperature for medium rare or medium or whatever you want. So do you pull the steak off and then put the cast iron on and turn the temp up all the way? Is that how it
Yeah.
works?
Yeah, so when like we'll talk medium rare because that's really how everybody in my house wants it. So I'll bring that internal low and slow to about 200 degrees, and then I bring it up to an internal of 115 degrees. You take it out of the cooker, pat it dry, let it rest. It's going to start to back off on the temperatures. It's not going to keep, there's not going to be any carryover, let's say. So it'll stop the cooking process. And then at that time, you'll put your cast iron in the pit or, into your pit, your pellet grill, crank it up, preheat that for maybe 20 minutes it takes, maybe. And then after you have a good 500, let's say 500 on the cast iron pan, put just a little bit of I use avocado oil, but you can use whatever you want. Type of a little bit of oil in there, and then put that steak in, smush her in, and she's gonna sear. Again, about 3 minutes aside on a 2 inch thick cut steak.
Okay.
If that
Now,
makes sense. And then
yep, I
and then
got
you
it.
then you pull it out, and then you should hit. If you're not quite there, I always look to get it right around 128 degrees, because it will carry over to about 134 degrees then. And then set her off the side and let her rest a little bit. I don't believe in the science of resting or anything like that, but I always say it's going to rest, because by the time I get it from the grill into everybody, it's still 5 minutes, by the time everybody
Yeah.
sat down to eat their steak. So, but yeah, I let it, you know, from the time I get it off the grill and then we eat it. That's it. But it's usually going to be 5 minutes.
Okay. So, asking about the resting, like, so you say you don't believe in resting. Like, is that just on a steak or is that on anything?
No, just on steaks. Yeah, on the
Okay.
steak thing,
You had me
because
a
some
little bit
people,
worried for a second. I was like, you
yeah,
don't
no, no, no.
rest a brisket?
No, 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 no. Because I know there's that big debate. Oh, you have to rest it for this long, or so the juices redistributes throughout the fibers and all that. Well, there's truth to that on a low and slow, obviously, but a steak. I mean, I put them on the plate and there's juice all over before I've cut them, or I put them on a plate and cut them as soon as I took it off the pit and got it on the cutting board because I was so darn hungry. There's still juice all over. What
Hmm.
I don't have that good of scientific measures that I can actually prove any of that. So I don't ever really go down that road. Take it off, get it in there, eat it. It's still going to take you 5 minutes to sit down and get everything ready. So, because you do want it to back off a little bit, in my opinion. Taking it right off the grill and cutting into it, well, you're going to burn something, probably your mouth.
Yeah, for sure. I've been victim of that more times than I'd like to admit.
Right,
You just got
right.
something, pull it off on the grill, looks like a masterpiece. Is like, oh, I need to try it. Yep. Now I have a burnt mouth for 3 days. My own fault.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
So I'm curious on your thought process on pellets and the types of pellets. Is there a certain formula or a certain type that you strictly like to use with certain meats, or are you a believer like you can use whatever type? What's your thought process with that?
Well, I will say that I'm associated with, I'm an ambassador with lumberjack pellets, but I've used all of them. I will say that I think when you're buying a pellet and you're looking for a flavor, you have to buy 100% whatever flavor that you're looking for. You can look into them. A lot of times it'll say it's cherry and there's 20% cherry in there and 80% oak or something like that. But there is certainly a flavor profile. If I'm using oak pellets compared to cherry pellets, there is a difference in the food. I'm not majorly, because it's still smoked, but there is a difference. You can taste cherry flavor compared to oak flavor in the smoke once you've kind of developed a palate for it, let's say. You can kind of taste the difference. I myself on beef am a big oak fan, not only because it's the popular word. I grew up in a very white and red oak area. So when my dad was cooking, it was red or white oak on beef. Pork, some applewood and maple. That's how it always was, because that was available for us. Pellets, I say try it, on your pork in chicken, apple, cherry. It's going to go really good. It's going to go really good. When you're getting into the beef, well, you want a little bit more. Do some oak or even mesquite if you really want a strong smoky flavor. The hickory is still probably one of my favorite on ribs. I love hickory pellets on ribs. So there's multiple. Don't just buy just the comp blends. If you're cooking and you like the comp blend, there's nothing. But sometimes try a few of the heavier, dense beef meat needs a little bit more like an oak or a nuttier flavor wood, or a nut producing wood, in my opinion. The fruit woods are going to be good for chicken and pork.
Okay, that makes sense. So I understand the certain types of pellets for certain meats. Do you also like to do certain types of pellets for certain spices? Do you feel like they accentuate certain ingredients?
I will say that brisket likes oak pellets. Brisket, in my opinion, that's my opinion, that I like a oak smoked brisket, no matter if it's on a pellet grill or a stick burner or even in the Weber, a Weber kettle. Always like oak wood over. I just think it fits with the black pepper and the salt. To me, my flavor profile, to me, the best. But if I'm really trying to impress my friends, I'm throwing cherry on that brisket because I'm going to have one heck of a pretty smoke ring, because cherry always, in my opinion, gives you great smoke rings. Part of the whole thing with the backyard barbecue end of it is presentation too, to your friends. You take out a nice 17-pound brisket and cook it up, and it still looks like it was in the crock pot. Well, that's no fun, right? You got to have it look good.
Yeah,
So
it's all
some of
about
that,
that smoke ring, man.
right. So you get that. Well, I always call it pink lipstick. You're always looking for that pink lipstick on there, so it looks like you want to kiss it. But the flavors on pork and rubs, well, if you're going for that sweet rub, hickory's a great one for that. If you're going for a really sweet flavor, well, apple is perfect on that. So it's just, your profile means a lot. But yeah, it's a little bit of enhancement probably in the flavors if you're going for sweet or you're going for savory. I mean, there is truth to that.
Okay, just make it your own, right?
Yeah, that's really the thing about backyard barbecue, is really just, you find out part of the whole fun about cooking is some of the failures, some of the things. Oh man, this just didn't turn out. At least now I know that I can't do this anymore. I need to do this. So I think that's part of the whole fun in backyard, compared to trying to figure out what the region likes more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can watch a million YouTube videos on how to do something, but like, you really truly learn when you get out there and you do it yourself, and experience from failures and successes and stuff like
Right,
that.
right,
For
right.
sure.
When grandma says it's good, you've done a good job. And because
There you
at least
go.
in my family was, because grandma was the pickiest eater in the whole world, and if it wasn't good, she'd let you know it wasn't good. So
And there's no telling her otherwise.
the right, you're not going to change your mind, grandma. Medium well is not the way you cook your steak.
Oh, love it. So, I haven't watched all of your YouTube videos. You've got a pile of them out there. So it's great content. I've loved every one I've seen so far.
Thanks.
A couple of the ones that I've seen, you've had like these like wood chunks in there. Can you elaborate on how you discovered that, and why you use these wood chunks on your grates and stuff?
Yeah, well, if you're talking like on the grate, it just makes, if you put, like, you're going to do some chicken wings and you're using like a vortex in the center of a kettle, if you put it right on top of the charcoal, it's going to burn up in a hurry. If you just set it on the grate, it kind of smolders a little bit longer and give you a little bit more woody flavor to it. Wood chunks, my dad and his best friend was a butcher, and they used to always do big rotisserie pig cooks. Okay. And my dad loved cooking pork shoulders. They started out with charcoal and they finished all the time with wood. And wood is always gives you actual flavor. Now, if you're cooking steaks, you don't really need to add any wood. You got a charcoal flavor. I like a charcoal flavor steak over a wood-fired steak. To be honest, that's probably my favorite preferred profile. But when it comes to actually smoking meat, you can use some lump charcoal and you'll get a smoky flavor. But when you add the extra wood chunks, you're actually developing another profile or a layer of flavor to it. Apple wood chunks, oak wood chunks, pecan wood chunks. There's all kinds of different things that you can put in there to enhance that overall profile of that meat. On charcoal and wood go well together. They really do. If you look at all the different types of, like the Weber Smoky Mountain and Weber Kettle, the slow and sear kettle, all these different little charcoal cookers. When you add that wood, you're boosting your flavor profile.
Okay, got you. And then, I was watching one other video where, like, I don't know if you were doing like brisket or ribs or something, like a pretty big chunk, and you'd put it like under the meat. Is that to make like airflow a little different, or what's going on there?
Um, my dad actually taught me that back in the late 80s, early 90s. He'd always would take, when he would cook beef or a butterflied pork butt, he always said, if you want to get bark, you got to get the water off from it. You got to let it just, you want to keep it moist, but you want that bark and that rub to set. So the concept why I did that, and I get to told this all the time. You saw that from Harry Sue. No, I saw it from David Rice back in the 80s. I didn't see it from Harry Sue. But he actually took rocks and had these special rocks. It's weird. He found some really nice, perfectly smooth but rounded rocks that he would put underneath he never used wood chunks. I just use it because I can't find the rocks. But I can find rocks, but not those. Well, anyways, it just domes up that protein, and then the water that's evaporating and cooking out and releasing from that, the fibers and the meat, it runs off, the slowly runs out of that piece of protein compared to piling up and pooling on top of that protein. So it actually helps that bark set a little quicker. So you can maybe develop a little bit darker. I like a charcoal bark. I want it to be, and what I mean by that, charcoal color. I want it black. I want it nice and dark. So to develop that type, you don't want a bunch of moisture on it. Now, once it's set, then you can add a little bit of moisture to it. So you end up having, you're keeping it moist, because moisture will help that too. But the pooling will defeat your whole idea of cooking and developing a bark. You see it all the time. People like, it tasted great, but I didn't have much of a bark. I had a good smoke ring, but no bark. Well, that's because you had too much moisture throughout that cook on top of that protein.
Okay. Another question related to that. So does that also help with like tenderness on the outside pieces of the meat? Like say like, the middle is the thickest part, and then it's like thinner on the corners. Does that help with the, have you noticed if it helps at all?
I've never noticed that. I mean, that's a good observation. It's something I could check, but I really just dome up all my brisket all the time, especially brisket. If it's a bone-in pork butt, well, there's no sense to put a little wood chunk underneath there. But if it's butterflied, then I always do. So when it comes to brisket, yes, it's mainly just for me to develop and get that bark to stick a little quicker. That's why I dome it up like that. Because how you put it in a pit after a couple hours is how it's going to come off. Yes, it's going to shrink, but it's how it's going to look. So there's partially I'm doing that too, to develop that more of that teardrop look on that brisket.
Gotcha. Well, if you ever need a taste tester for that theory, I'm here for you anytime.
Okay. Anytime, Mike. You can come over anytime.
Perfect. So, I was watching another video you had on ribs. It was wrapped versus no wrapped. Can you explain the differences and maybe which one you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, as far as differences, really all you're doing when you wrap a rib is you are quickening up the cook process. You're making it a little bit faster because it's now braising. It's in the moisture inside is steaming, and it's going to tenderize it a little bit quicker on a wrapped rib. A no wrapped rib, well, it's exactly what it is. You're going to run that until it's tender all the way through, and it's going to get a little darker. It's going to be it's just there's just no quickening to it. I don't know how to explain it the best, but now competition rib is going to be wrapped always because they want it at a certain color. They want it to look just fire engine red. They want that to look beautiful. So they want to get it tender. Well, the only way they can do that and keep that color is by wrapping it. All right. If they
Mm-hmm.
let it run all the way through to tender, it's going to get dark. It's just, I mean, with the sugar, if you're putting on a rib, it's going to darken up. We prefer no wrapped ribs because my family does like a little bit more char in that bite. They like they like barbecue sauce, but they like it on the side more. So that's another thing with like a no wrap rib. You can put sauce on it, but the reason a lot of times I'll do wrapped ribs is because I want to get that sauce to penetrate in that meat. So I'll dump the sauce. I know a lot of people do the brown sugar and the butter baths and all that. That's too sweet. That's too much of a candy rib. I'm not a big candy rib. I will still want to taste more savory along with that pork. So just putting a little bit of spritz on the outside to keep it moisture, the moisture content in it good while you're going through the cooking process. A no wrap rib is what I call an eaten rib. That's just, you want ribs. All right, let's go put some ribs on. 4 hours ish later, they're done. You can eat them in 15 minutes if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But the our preferred around here is a no wrap rib more than wrapping them up in aluminum foil and so you can get them to be tender, bite off the bone. You know, a lot of people like the 3-2-1 fall off the bone ribs. I don't. I want a little bit of snap in that bite. I want it to be tender, but not mush. Not where it's just, because then when I and obviously I've overcooked ribs before. Well, what do we do with those ribs? We aren't cutting them into separate bones for leftovers for the next day. We're stripping it off the bone, and then it's going to go into some pulled pork sandwiches. Basically, is what it ends up being, a rib sandwich. Um, so again, back to which one I prefer. I like the no wrap ribs. Not knocking the wrapped ribs, but I like a little bit darker color on those ribs. So to achieve that, you're running them longer, really.
Okay, gotcha. I like that answer. Just kind of telling the similarities and the differences between the two, and it really, there's no perfect answer for that. It's all about preference and what
Right.
you want to do. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever cooked ribs like not wrapped. Like I just, the first time I ever made ribs is like I'll Google how to do it, and that was the first one I found, and
Sure.
like now I
Sure.
tried it. But like when you talk about the no wrap ribs, I mean that sounds intriguing. It sounds tasty, and I find myself like, yeah, I really don't want that mushy taste. So maybe I'll have to, broaden my horizons a little bit, try something different, and do that no wrap method.
Well, and one thing I should add that I forgot to say is that when you do a no wrap rib, you are actually developing a little bit crispier bark on the outside of it too. So it's got a little bit of a crispiness on that very thin little layer of your rub and your bark. It's a little, I, the best way to say is you got a little bit of crispy bite. Once you pop through that, then you have your tenderness. So it's just a little different of a texture of a rib. Don't be afraid if they get dark. That's the only way you're going to avoid that is if you don't use any sugar. Then you can get them where they're not going to be that dark. I always do tell people that if they're going to do a no wrap rib and you don't want the bottoms to almost look like it's bark, people don't think that they're burnt. They're not burnt. It's just starting to develop a good bark on the outside. But if you don't want that, just put a little black pepper and a little bit of salt on the bone side. That'll prevent that.
Okay, nice. So we've talked a lot about meats and protein. What about some non-meats? What are some of your favorites to cook on the pellet grill?
Number one, it's going to be asparagus. My wife is, I think, addicted to asparagus, so it's always that. We love doing corn in there. I have no video of either, I don't think. Yeah, I've got some B-roll that I've used where I'm cooking asparagus, but I've never actually done a vegetable, but it's corn and asparagus. Now, my wife likes it when I throw some cucumbers on there. She likes a little bit of that, and bell peppers. Any type of vegetable that you like, you can grill and it's going to give it more flavor because you're adding a little bit of char to it. You want to achieve that little bit of charness to it, but it really enhances the flavor in that vegetable and fruits. I mean, when I'm doing grilled grilled lemon or lime shrimp, I always put that lemon or that lime on there because it sweetens up that juice in there too. Try it, and you will obviously know in a heartbeat that because those sugars really start to, I don't know, they're not really changing in the molecular structure here, but they're just enhanced. There's a lot more enhancement in the flavor when you throw. So if you're gonna do some lobster tails, throw those lemons on there and get them so they're so much juicier. This is my best way to explain it. I'm not a chef. I'm just a guy that loves to eat.
Yep, don't we
Look,
all?
yeah, look at my waistline. You'll be able to tell. I like to eat. So
Oh, that's funny. Well, we just got you from the chest down, so
yeah, all right. So I'm not. Well, I'm not too bad. You know?
oh, funny. So I mean, it's so fun to cook. It's so fun to eat. So
Yeah, it is. You know, and that's where the backyard part of it comes in. That I don't care if you're cooking on a little smoky Joe. You know, it's about you cooking and you developing your likes and what you're satisfied in what you cooked, and it's a lot better than going and grabbing a hungry man and throwing it in the microwave because that really is changing the molecular structure of that food.
hmm
So if you can cook with some live fire or cook with pellets, you don't need a humongous pellet grill. I have some really nice pellet grills. You can have a smaller pellet grill and achieve the same thing that I'm maybe doing on a 1600 square inch pellet grill. You know, you can do the same thing with a 600 square inch. So um, cooking is all about what you want to do. So do it and experiment and learn and just have a blast doing it. That's why I always say in my videos all the time, you know, I'm here to amplify your backyard barbecue fun because I want you to realize that barbecue really is about fun. That's what it's fun. It's family and hanging out with your friends, cooking for your buddies and watching a football game or whatever. It's about adding this extra part of the entertainment that is so important to the world. Food is important to the world. So barbecue is part of food. So add it and have fun.
yep, it's just a wonderful way of bringing people together.
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's and hanging out. I mean, some of my fondest memories is as a kid hanging out with these old timers, you know, all these old timers standing around an open pit cooking stuff. And you're just amazed that, like, this was just cooked on wood chunks on a tripod. Are you kidding me? You know, people would pay $100 for this, you know. So it's about fun and in your achievement of having a successful cook.
Yep, 100%. So, I greatly appreciate your time on here. I've learned quite a bit. You've answered some of my burning questions, and you kind of motivated me to get out, bust out the pellet grill again, and try a few new things. So,
Awesome.
What can we expect from you from down the road in future videos? Can you give us a little tease?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a new pit that came in. It's an electric smoker, so but it uses sawdust actually. So I'm looking at getting into doing some sausage and some jerky videos because that's another part of my life that I grew up, but I never really did. I was always just the gopher. Hey, go upstairs and get me this. Okay, so I'm now going to make the adventure into doing some of my own brats. I mean, I live in Wisconsin. What do we eat? I mean, brats is part of the food. That's its own food group, to be honest with you here,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Them and cheese curds, two food groups in
Exactly.
Wisconsin, man.
Exactly. That's where I'm enhancing my learning and to be better. I've done it, but I've never done it. You know what I mean? I've been a part of making some bratwurst. but I never had to really sit there and think. I was just there. So that's one thing that you'll see me doing on a PS seasoning, PK smokers. So I'm pretty excited to get that thing running. And again, it's really for making venison sausage and all that, but you can still do barbecue in it too. I have another pit that's coming in, another pellet grill, and I'm excited to get that on the channel. That'll be here pretty soon. So you're going to see a lot of pellet grill cooks from me in the future too. I have a Santa Maria that I love. That's probably my favorite pit to actually stand on and bring back memories of charcoal and wood. So yeah, I try to post a video every week. I have a job. I have a day job. My YouTube and my social media is my fun time at this point. So I try to do as much as I can. But my main thing that I'm always looking at is trying to entertain you. So some of the videos take a little bit more time to process on how I'm going to entertain you and still give you something that you learn from me. So.
Yep. I love the effort. You got some education and some entertainment in there. You're definitely a unique character, and I appreciate that in the videos. So, Jeff, thank you so much for your time and knowledge, and best of luck down the road.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, buddy, and I appreciate you having me on.
You just heard our segment with Jeff Rice of Dead Broke BBQ on all things pellet grill. Now, he's got a great YouTube channel full of education and entertainment, just like that Mortal Kombat video that he put out. So we highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel. If you guys need anything for grilling, be it pellet grills, rubs, spices, seasonings, make sure to head to your local SCHEELS store or check out SCHEELS.com. We got a great selection of everything you need for your outdoor cooking needs. And with that, we want to thank you all for listening and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. Stay tuned for future segments and visit our social media pages, SCHEELS Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram for daily updates.